The Sanskrit word for spacecraft or aircraft is vimana, which you see there. And in India, you can find depictions of vimanas in temple carvings in many places throughout India. This is a depiction of a vimana in a temple carving in the Ellora cave temples in northern India. The Ellora caves are located near the city of Aurangabad, and in addition to the carvings of vimanas, there are some other interesting things there. Basically, what you have at Ellora is a huge mountain made of stone, and there are temples carved out of solid stone in this place. There's this elaborate temple, hundreds of feet tall, with hundreds of pillars, hundreds of rooms, all carved out of a single block of stone. It's really pretty an amazing place. I don't know how they were able to accomplish this. Now, in addition to depictions of vimanas in stone carvings, there are accounts of vimanas in ancient Sanskrit text. Now, here I'm going to make a distinction between authentic Sanskrit text and other kinds of text. In UFO circles, there's a lot of talk about the Vaimanika Shastra, which contains some detailed descriptions of various types of vimanas. But we have to keep in mind that this is not a genuinely old Sanskrit text. It is a document that was channeled, received by channeling in the early 20th century by a man in South India, and he dictated the channeling, and it was set down in a book which circulated widely in the UFO community. Now, I'm not saying that all the information in a channeled text is necessarily wrong or imagined, but tonight I'm going to be dealing with genuine Sanskrit texts that are thousands of years old. In particular, I'm going to be dealing with the Bhagavat Purana, or Srimad Bhagavatam as it's sometimes called. The Puranas are the historical writings of ancient India, and this is one of the Puranas. The Puranas contain accounts of vimanas. Now, the accounts are not as detailed as we get from the channeled text, like the Vaimanika Shastra, but these are authentic historical documents. The cosmology that's described in the Puranas is a multi-level cosmos, where you have one level of the cosmos at the bottom dominated by ordinary matter. It's inhabited by beings adapted to the conditions there. Beyond that, there is a subtle material level of the cosmos. It's inhabited by beings adapted to the conditions there. And then there's a non-material or spiritual level of the cosmos, inhabited by beings adapted to the conditions there. So there's a whole cosmic hierarchy of beings. Now, many scientists today would find such ideas to be very challenging. They find it very hard to accept that we're part of a multi-level cosmos, part of a whole cosmic hierarchy of beings. But there have been some scientists in recent times who have accepted this idea. One of them was Dr. John Mack, who was head of the psychiatry department at the Harvard University Medical School. He wrote in his book, Passport to the Cosmos, "It appears ever more likely that we exist in a multi-dimensional cosmos. The cosmos appears to be filled with beings, creatures, spirits, intelligences, gods." Dr. Mack had heard accounts of alien abductions, and he became interested in this phenomenon and conducted some psychiatric studies of the people reporting such things. The common opinion among many psychiatrists and psychologists was that these people were psychotic or neurotic, and that they were simply giving accounts of hallucinations or imaginations. But Dr. Mack, in his research, found these people displayed no signs of psychosis or neurosis. They were perfectly sane. They were, however, displaying the symptoms of post-traumatic stress, which, for example, soldiers or policemen may suffer from. I actually met Dr. John Mack in Glastonbury, England, where we were both speaking at a conference on crop circles. He came to my lecture there, and afterwards we had a talk. I'd always admired his work because his colleagues at Harvard University had tried to get his tenure withdrawn. They couldn't stand the fact that a Harvard University professor was taking as factual reports of alien abduction events, and that he was talking about things like I quoted here from his book, Passport to the Cosmos. So they convened an academic court to remove him from his position, but he successfully fought that. So I'd always admired him, and he said he liked my work. So we had agreed to stay in touch with each other. However, shortly after that, he died in a mysterious automobile accident in England. He was struck by an automobile as he was walking on a sidewalk. So it was, I think, a great loss to us all. Now, in my book, Human Devolution, a Vedic alternative to Darwin's theory, I give a lot of evidence supporting this idea that we exist in a multi-level cosmos inhabited by different types of beings existing at the different levels. But that's not the topic that I'm dealing with tonight. The point of interest is that according to the cosmology of ancient India, there are different kinds of vimanas or spacecraft that exist at different levels of this cosmos. There are spiritual vimanas, there are subtle material vimanas, and there are gross material vimanas. And I'm going to give an example of each from the Bhagavad Purana, an ancient Sanskrit text. First, I'll start with a spiritual or non-material vimana. In the Bhagavad Purana, there is a description of the vimana of Dhruva Maharaj. Now, in the text, the history of this person, Dhruva, is described. At the end of his life, Dhruva went to the Himalayan mountains and began to practice yoga and meditation there. He entered into a state of trance, experiencing his conscious self as different from his material body. At that point, according to the text, a vimana came from the spiritual level of reality, descending from the sky. And this is from the Sanskrit text that describes what happened. Sadadarsha vimanagriyam nabaso vatarat dhruva vibrajayat dashadisho rakapatim ivoditam. And in English, this means he saw a very beautiful vimana coming down from the sky as if the brilliant full moon were coming down, illuminating all the 10 directions. So, we were hearing in the introductory remarks about, people perceiving strange lights. Well, in this case, Dhruva was sitting, meditating, and he had achieved a very high level of meditation. And at that moment, a vimana descended from the spiritual level of reality, and it was glowing. It was illuminating the entire area. And the text goes on to state that Dhruva saw 2 persons in the vimana, and they spoke to him. And they said they had been sent to take him, Dhruva, to Vaikuntha, which is the Sanskrit word for the spiritual level of reality. The text goes on to state that as Dhruva boarded this craft, his body was transformed. Yesha tadadishtatum bibrad rupram hiranmayam. In the translation from the Sanskrit, as he boarded the vimana, his body became illuminated like molten gold. In other words, there was an energy transformation as he entered the field of energy, surrounding this craft. Because if he was going to be transferred to this higher energy level of reality, his body had to be vibrating at the same energy level. It had to be made of the same type of energy. So, after his body was transformed and he boarded the vimana, the text says, as the vimana traveled, Dhruva saw the planets of the solar system go by. So it's an interplanetary journey that he was on. But then it went into not just an interplanetary mode of travel, but an interdimensional mode of travel. The text says the vimana then reached the subtle material planets and passed through them. And then finally it arrived at Vaikuntha in the highest level of reality. So, in this account, we have a description of a vimana or a spacecraft coming from the highest level of reality, the level of pure consciousness. It went down through the subtle material levels of reality to the gross level of material reality that we inhabit. Dhruva entered this craft, which was piloted by 2 beings from that higher level of reality, and then the craft went back through the different levels of the cosmos to that highest level of reality. So there's another interesting point So when did this occur, according to the text, the Bhagavat Purana? According to the Bhagavat Purana, Dhruva lived during a period of time called the Swayambhuva Manvantar. And here we have to understand something about the Vedic concept of time. It's cyclical. Time goes in vast cycles of creation and destruction. The basic unit of the Vedic cyclical time concept is the kalpa, or the day of Brahma. It lasts for 4,320,000,000 years. It's followed by a night of Brahma, which also lasts for 4,320,000,000 years. Then comes another day of Brahma, another night of Brahma. During the days of Brahma, according to the Puranas, life, including human life, is manifest in the cosmos, and during the nights it's dormant. So the kalpa, or the day of Brahma, is divided into 14 manvantar periods, each lasting about 300 million years. Today, we are in the middle of the 7th manvantar period. The Swayambhuva Manvantar period, during which Dhruva lived, according to the text, was about 1.7 to 2 billion years ago. So this may seem mythological to some people. According to modern scientific accounts, the first human beings appeared on Earth about 150,000 years ago. Before that, we're told there were no human beings like us. But when I did 8 years of research into the entire history of archaeology, I found there were many reports of human bones, human artifacts, and human footprints going back many, many millions of years, far further back in time than 150,000 years. Now, this evidence isn't very well known because of a process of knowledge filtration that operates in the world of science. We can call the blue box there the knowledge filter. What it represents is the dominant consensus among scientists today about human origins. So, reports of evidence that conform to the dominant consensus will pass through this intellectual filter very easily, which means we'll read about this evidence in textbooks. But if there's evidence that radically contradicts the dominant consensus, it tends to be filtered out, which means we don't hear very much about it. And I think one of the reasons I was initially invited to speak at UFO organizations like MUFON is my discussion of this knowledge filtering process as it operated in archaeology. I think UFO researchers have found that the same type of knowledge filtering process operates in mainstream science in terms of its attitude towards reports for the existence of UFOs, extraterrestrials, alien abductions, and things of that sort. So I'll just mention one of these cases from archaeology, the California gold mine discoveries. During the gold rush days, miners dug tunnels into the sides of mountains like Table Mountain in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And deep inside these tunnels, the miners found human bones and human artifacts. For example, they found many of these stone mortars and pestles. What makes them so interesting to me is they were found in layers of solid rock that belong to the early part of the geological period called the Eocene, which means they would be over 50 million years old. These discoveries were reported to the scientific world by Dr. Whitney, who was the chief government geologist of California. His report was published by Harvard University, but we don't hear very much about these discoveries today because of the process of knowledge filtration. This is the anthropologist William Holmes of the Smithsonian Institution. He wrote, "If Dr. Whitney had understood the theory of human evolution, he wouldn't have come to those conclusions. He would not have published that report." In other words, if the facts did not support the dominant theory, the facts should be forgotten. And basically, that's what happened. However, some of the artifacts from the California gold mines are still in the collection of the Museum of Anthropology at the University of California at Berkeley, although they are not shown to the public. I got permission from the director of the museum to see those artifacts. They're not kept in the museum itself. They're kept in a storage building a few miles from the museum, but they are still there. Now, I was mentioning that in connection with the idea that the Vimana of Dhruva belongs to a historical period that, according to the ancient Sanskrit text, goes back over 1 billion years. So, the Vimana of Dhruva was what we can call a spiritual Vimana. Next, I'm going to deal with a part of the text that describes a subtle material Vimana. And this is the Vimana of Kardama Muni, who was a great mystic yogi, according to the Bhagavat Purana. And the text says, Kardamo yogam ashtita vimanam kamagam chatas tarheva chikarat. And the translation of that is, the sage Kardama exercised his yogic power and instantly produced a vimana that could travel at his will. So that's an interesting concept. You know, a vimana, or a spacecraft, that could move according to a person's will. Now these days, scientists are beginning to develop prosthetics and navigation systems that can operate just by a person's mental powers. There are navigational systems for fast-flying fighter aircraft that have been developed by the military that function in that way. And as I said, there are prosthetic devices that doctors have developed that will enable people with certain types of injuries to be able to function just by their mental nervous signals being sent to these prosthetic devices. So Kardama Muni manifested a vimana, or a spacecraft, that could travel directed by his mind. In another text about this spacecraft, it says, Hamsa Parvata Vratais Tatra Tatra Nikujitam Kritraman Manyamanai Svam Adi Rudya Cha. And the translation of that is, in that vimana were live swans and pigeons, as well as artificial swans and pigeons, so lifelike that the real swans, vibrating sounds, flew up to them, thinking them live birds like themselves. Now, what I find interesting about that is apparently in this Vimana there were artificial birds, robots, you could say, that were so lifelike that real birds that were also on this Vimana approached them thinking that they were real birds like themselves. And this is another topic that can be found in the ancient Sanskrit writings, descriptions of robots that were very lifelike. I find it very interesting that in a text that was composed thousands of years ago, we can find such things. Another text about this craft, Brajishnuna Vimanena Kamagena Mahiyasa Vaimanikan Atyasheta Charat Lokan Yatanila. The translation, Kardama traveled in the Vimana through the planets, moving like the wind. His Vimana, which could fly at his will, surpassed the Vimanas of the demigods. So there are descriptions of this Vimana moving throughout the different planetary systems simply at the will of Kardama. So that is a subtle material Vimana, produced by the yogic power of a sage. Now I'm going to deal with a gross material Vimana described in these ancient texts. And this is the Vimana of King Shalva. Shalva was a demoniac king living on this earth planet. So the texts in the Bhagavad Purana say, Maya Pura Param Jaya Puram Nirmaya Shalvaya Pradat Salbam Ayasmayam. In the translation, Maya Danava, who conquers his enemies' cities, constructed a flying iron city named Salva and presented it to Shalva. So this is an example of extraterrestrial technology transfer, which is a topic that comes up in modern UFO studies. There are many accounts of such things that different researchers have gone into, how apparently there have been agreements between persons on Earth and extraterrestrial beings involving technology transfer. So, according to these ancient Sanskrit texts, that's not a new thing. This King Shalva was a king on this earth planet. He was very materialistic, and the Sanskrit word for him is asura, which means a person who is opposed to the principles of good. So there are higher dimensional beings that are also opposed to the principles of goodness, who are deeply immersed in greed, anger, desires to control and dominate and exploit others for their own benefit. We see distinctions like that on this level of reality, so on higher levels of reality there are also different types of beings. According to the Sanskrit terminology, there are suras, those who are following the principles of good, and the asuras, who are following the opposite kind of principles. So, this King Shalva was in touch with one of these higher asuric or demoniac beings, And this being, Mayadanava, was the engineer of the higher level asuras. So a terrestrial human, in this account, got a spaceship from a higher asuric being or demoniac being. As I said, it's an example of extraterrestrial technology transfer. So Shalva used this Vimana to attack a city on Earth. So just to summarize the basic elements, this Mayadanava is the engineer of the demoniac forces in the cosmos. He gave this Vimana to a king on Earth. So this is an example of extraterrestrial technology transfer. And this Vimana is made of metal, not of spiritual substances or subtle material substances. It was made of gross material elements like our missiles and spacecraft that we manufacture. So the Sanskrit text says, Salabhva kamagam yanam tamo dhamma durasadam yayastvara shalvo. Translation, this unassailable vehicle was filled with darkness and could go anywhere. Upon obtaining it, Shalva went to Dwarka, the city of Dwarka. So, what does it mean that this vehicle was filled with darkness? Here I think we're talking about a kind of cloaking technology that could cause this craft to become invisible to whoever was trying to oppose it. And this craft is also described as kamagam, moving at will. So this spacecraft made of metal could move at the will of the person piloting it, according to this account. So Dwarka was the city of Krishna, who is known in these ancient Sanskrit texts as the supreme being, supreme conscious being in the cosmos. So his city was a fabulous city, very cultured city, run according to the principles of divine goodness. So King Shalva attacked this city, which was located in northwestern India on the shore of the Arabian Sea. And today, there's still a city in that location of the name Dwarka. And in the ocean off the coast of this city, remains of an ancient city have been found that go back about 5,000 years. And that's the time of the city of Dwarka that was ruled by Krishna, according to the ancient Sanskrit text. So marine archaeologists have done research in this area, and they have discovered architectural remains in the water off the coast of the present city of Dwarka. But getting back to the attack on the city 5,000 years ago, Vimanagram Nipeto Shastra Vrishtaya, the text says. And the translation there is, from the Vimana came down torrents of weapons. So this metal Vimana was flying over the city of Dwarka 5,000 years ago, raining down various types of weapons on the city. One of the weapons is described as Ashanaya, thunderbolts. So that suggests some kind of energy beam or laser type of weapon that was being used to destroy the city of Dwarka. The text goes on to say, Prachandas Chakravato Bhut Rajasat Chabdita Disha. The translation of that is, a fierce whirlwind arose and blanketed all directions with dust. So this could refer to one of two things, I believe. It could refer to the kind of firestorm that develops when a city is firebombed. Sometimes it sets up a huge fire that starts sucking in air and raising large clouds of dust and things like that. Or it could refer to some type of weather weapon. The ability of this vimana to manipulate the weather in such a way that a huge whirlwind or tornado develop. And there is speculation today among researchers that some governments today have developed these kinds of capabilities. Texts go on to say, Ityardhyamana sabena Krishnasya nagari brisham nabhyapadyata sham rajams triparena yatamahi. In the translation of that, I told you we're going to go into the Sanskrit text. So, the translation for that, thus, terribly tormented by the spaceship Salba, Lord Krishna's city had no peace. Just like the earth when it was attacked by the 3 aerial cities of the demons. So, here in this Sanskrit text, which is describing the attack on the city of Dwarka by a spaceship, it mentions another historical incident in which the entire earth was attacked by 3 huge extraterrestrial craft, which were like flying cities. In that case, the demigod Shiva shot down these 3 spaceships, which were like flying cities. He is therefore called, Shiva is sometimes therefore called Tripurari. So, Tri means 3, Pura means cities, Ari means the enemy of. So Tripurari is a name for Shiva. That means he shot down these 3 spacecraft that were attacking the earth. The story of this incident is told in the 7th canto of the Bhagavat Purana. The story basically goes like this. The demigods, or suras, defeated the demons, the asuras, in a cosmic battle. Then Mayadanava gave the demons 3 huge metal vimanas with the power of invisibility. Now this is something that comes up in modern analyses of UFO, alien, extraterrestrial types of events. And that's the idea that there is some kind of cosmic struggle going on at all different levels of the cosmos. And the earth is sometimes dragged into these struggles that are going on on different levels of reality. So this Mayadanava, the engineer of the demoniac forces, gave the demons 3 huge metal vimanas with the power of invisibility, with this cloaking power. And there's been in the news recently some accounts of how scientists today are beginning to get a little bit of this ability to cloak material objects, give them invisibility, by manipulations of energy. So maybe there's some extraterrestrial technology transfer still going on today. So the demons, or the asuras, used these 3 huge metal vimanas to conquer different planetary systems. So the suras, or the demigods, asked Shiva, who is known to be very powerful, for help. So Shiva attacked the spaceships of the asuras, or demons, with weapons that are described as arrows. But they weren't ordinary arrows, if by arrow we mean a shaft of wood with some metal tip on it. The arrows are described in the Sanskrit text like this: Tatognagni varna ishava upetu surya mandalat yata mayuka sandoha. In the translation, the arrows released by Lord Shiva appeared like fiery beams emanating from the sun globe. So whatever they weren't ordinary arrows. The descriptions appear to resemble modern anti-satellite missile weapons. In other words, the governments and militaries on Earth are developing weapons to shoot down spacecraft. But according to these ancient texts, this is not a new idea. Thousands of years ago, Shiva was shooting down spacecraft with missile-like weapons. So when Shiva attacked these 3 huge spacecraft with his weapons, he killed many of the asuras, or demons, who were piloting and manning these craft. The texts then say that Mayadanava, the engineer of the demons, restored life to the demons by putting them into a reservoir of special liquid. So that means the tissues of the bodies of the aliens who were manning these 3 huge spacecraft were damaged beyond repair. But it says he put them into some bathing type of liquid, and their bodies were restored. Now, medical doctors today, making use of stem cell technology and other related types of procedures, are trying to develop these same types of abilities, the ability to restore damaged tissues. And apparently this isn't a new concept. So when their bodies were restored, the demons, or asuras, resumed the battle. So the text says that at that point, Krishna gave Shiva new, more powerful weapons, which Shiva used to finally destroy the flying cities or vimanas of the Asuras. Now back to Dwarka, because the reason I brought up these 3 huge flying spacecraft that were used to attack the Earth is that the author of the Bhagavat Purana said that the attack by King Shalva on the city of Dwarka reminded him of this earlier incident where 3 huge extraterrestrial craft had attacked the Earth and been shot down by Shiva. So, while Shalva was attacking the city of Dwarka with his Vimana or spacecraft, the armies in Dwarka were trying to shoot it down, but they weren't successful. The text describes the movements of the Vimana of King Shalva. Bahu rupaika rupam tat drishyate na tradrishyate maya 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 kritam durvibhavyam parayara bhut. The translation for that Sanskrit text, at one moment, the Vimana built by Maya Danava appeared in many identical forms. In the next moment, it was only one form again. Sometimes it was visible, and sometimes not. Thus, Shalva's opponents could never be sure where it was. So these are abilities that modern militaries are also developing. The ability to have their aircraft enter an enemy's airspace and appear to the detection devices to be either invisible or sometimes here, sometimes there. Maybe they, like when missiles come today, they send out many decoy warheads, so that you don't know which is the real warhead. So apparently, these kinds of technological developments are not new. We find descriptions of such things in text thousands of years old, like this one. And many observers of modern UFOs have observed similar things in terms of the movements and appearances of UFOs. So, among the defenders of the city was Krishna. So the texts say that Shalva launched what's called a spear at Krishna's chariot. And whatever it wasn't an ordinary spear. If by spear we mean a shaft of wood with a metal tip on it. The text describes this weapon, Shaktim Bhima Ravam Hriday. Shalva's spear made a frightening roaring sound on the battlefield. It made a loud roaring sound. And a further description says, Tama patantim nabasi maholkam eva ramhasa bashyayantim disha shauri sayakai shatadach chinat. Shalva's hurtling spear lit up the whole sky like a mighty meteor. But Krishna tore the great weapon into hundreds of pieces with his arrows. So although the words spear and arrows are used here, these are obviously not primitive spears and arrows. Tend to, again, resemble things that our militaries are developing today, like anti-missile missiles. In other words, Shalva had launched his missile, which appeared like a meteor moving across the sky with a loud roaring sound. And then Krishna shot it down with his weapons, which were described as like lightning bolts. So it sounds more like anti-missile missiles than primitive spears and arrows. The weapons are further described: Salvam cha ke brahmat, avidyat sharasandohai, kam surya iva rashmabi. The translation for that text: Krishna struck Shalva's vimana with a torrent of arrows appearing like the powerful rays of the sun. Now, something interesting happens at this point. Shalva brought his vimana down close to the earth, and then he jumped out of the vimana and began to personally attack Krishna. In this personal combat, Krishna wounded this king Shalva. Then, the text says, Shalva just mysteriously disappeared, became invisible. And then a messenger appeared and approached Krishna, saying, "Your mother has sent me to tell you that Shalva has captured your father." Then, all of a sudden, Shalva reappears, and he's got Krishna's father as his captive. And then Shalva cuts off his head with a sword, according to the text. The text says, Utkritya shira adaya kastam salbam samavishat. Taking the head with him, Shalva entered his vimana, which was hovering in the sky. So I'd like to see some Hollywood producer with the proper resources depict this whole battle. I think it would be very interesting. So just picture this. He's cut off the head of Krishna's father. He takes the head and then goes up into his vimana, which is hovering right there. Then the text says, Abudyad asarim mayam sashalva prashritam mayoditam. The translation for that is, Krishna detected that this was an illusion engineered by Maya Danava and employed by Shalva. Natatra dutam na patu kalevaram. Krishna could see neither the messenger nor the headless body of his father. So picture this. So after Shalva went back into his spacecraft with the head of Krishna's father, the messenger and the headless body of Krishna's father just evaporated, disappeared. So then Krishna could tell this wasn't a real event. This was some kind of technology that was employed by Shalva. And, we see this in technology today. There's 3D holographic projections, which are sometimes employed by performers, musicians. For example, this picture shows a 3D holographic performance of the singer Ellie Lawson. In other words, that's not Ellie Lawson, that's a 3D holographic projection of Ellie Lawson. And here in Southern California, a year ago, there was a famous performance where Snoop I forget his name now. I don't think he calls himself Dog anymore. But he was interacting with Tupac in a holographic projection at the Coachella Music Festival. So apparently this Vimana that Shalva was operating had some kind of 3D holographic projection facility whereby he was able to manifest these illusory forms of Krishna's father, the messenger, the cutting off of the head. So then the text goes on to say, Tat Krishna hastaritaya vichurnitam papata toye. So this describes how Krishna finally just shot down this Vimana. Smashed to pieces by Krishna's weapon, the Vimana fell into the sea. So I think this leaves open the possibility that there may be a crashed UFO off the coast of India. And maybe these marine archaeologists could have a look for that as well. In the waters off the present coast of Dwarka. So, just to review the point that I've tried to make here, is that according to these ancient Sanskrit texts, there are different types of extraterrestrial beings, and there are different types of vimanas or UFOs or spacecraft. Some of them are made of spiritual elements, of pure consciousness. Some of them are made of subtle mental and intellectual energies, and some of them are made of gross material elements. And if we take that into account, that may help us evaluate the different types of UFO and alien evidence that we encounter today. Now, some of this extraterrestrial technology, these extraterrestrial craft, may in fact be metal craft making use of the ordinary laws of physics. However, there may also be other types of craft that involve more subtle types of energies and laws. So, I want to thank you for your powers of attention